I woke up alone, the other side of the bed untouched, still cold from the night before. Liam had left some time before dawn, slipping out quietly, leaving only a vague text about going fishing with his brother Jake. No warning, no mention last night, and definitely no acknowledgement that today marked another year of our marriage. I stared at the message for a while, not because I didn't understand it, but because I did. The apartment was quiet in that strange, hollow way it gets when you know no one's coming back anytime soon. I made coffee mostly out of habit, let the bitter steam hit my face, and stepped out onto the balcony, needing air. It was colder than I expected, the kind of chill that crept through your sleeves and stayed under your skin. That's when I noticed the new guy, Travis, if I remembered the mailbox right, helping one of the older tenants with her shopping bags. He moved without rushing, like he had nowhere better to be, like he didn't mind slowing down for someone else's day. Later, after turning the apartment upside down looking for a missing laundry receipt, I heard a knock. Travis stood at my door, holding it between two fingers, as if he already knew how ridiculous it was to knock for something so small. "Saw this downstairs," he said, half smiling. "Didn't want it to end up in the trash. Sometimes it's the little things that screw everything up." We talked longer than we should have. It wasn't flirty, but it also wasn't casual. There was something careful in the way we both stayed in the doorway, neither one stepping back or forward, like we both felt the line but didn't want to say it out loud. When he finally left, I checked my phone again. Still no message, no missed call, not even a typing bubble. I went to bed with it in my hand, not out of hope, but because some part of me needed proof that he'd had the chance to remember me, and still didn't. A few days later, I saw Travis again while cutting across the courtyard on my way back from the store. He was crouched beside a little girl's bike, sleeves rolled up, grease on his wrist, calmly explaining how to tighten the brake cable like it was the most natural thing in the world. The girl, maybe 7 or 8, watched him with absolute focus, her small hands mimicking his. He looked up just as I passed, gave a short wave, and asked if I ever got that laundry receipt back where it belonged. I told him I did, and we exchanged a few words. Nothing loaded, but something in the way he looked at me lingered longer than the conversation lasted. That night, Liam came home late again, the kind of late that smells like someone else's air freshener clinging to his clothes. He dropped his keys on the counter and flopped onto the couch without even acknowledging me. When I asked how the day went, he just grabbed the remote, muttered something about being exhausted, and turned on the TV loud enough to make conversation feel like an interruption. I waited through one full episode of whatever mindless show he chose, hoping for a glance, a word, anything, before I finally gave up and left. I walked to the corner cafe, the one that stays open all night and smells like burnt toast and cinnamon. It wasn't until I ordered a coffee and turned around that I saw Travis in the corner booth, alone, reading a paperback with a folded spine and a nearly empty mug. He noticed me at once, nodded toward the other side of the booth, and said I looked like I needed to sit down. I did. We talked for over an hour about the kind of things people only admit to strangers, how hard it is to feel like you're failing at something you used to be good at, how cities stop feeling like home once certain people leave, how people drift apart not with drama, but with silence. There was no flirting, no lingering looks, nothing that could be called inappropriate, but still, something in the air shifted slightly, not enough to name, but enough to notice. It happened on one of those rushed afternoons when everything already felt one step away from falling apart. Mickey had a sudden allergic reaction to something at the park, and in my panic, I realized halfway home that I'd left the emergency kit behind on the bench next to the swings. I had him bundled in the car seat, breathing steadily but still with that red rash spreading up his arms, when Travis appeared beside the car, holding the bright blue pouch I'd forgotten. Not saying anything at first, just quietly offering it with a look that said he understood the kind of fear that scrambles your brain. After a moment of hesitation, he asked if I wanted him to drive, that it might be safer, and before I could second-guess myself, I nodded and moved to the passenger seat. During the short ride, Mickey dozed off in the back, his breathing already calming, and Travis told me about how he used to work at a repair shop before the divorce. How, after everything fell apart, he couldn't stand the smell of motor oil anymore, like it carried memories that stuck to his skin. There was no bitterness in his voice, just a kind of worn acceptance that only comes from living through something that doesn't leave scars people can see. I didn't say much about Liam, but I could tell from the way Travis glanced at me sideways, then looked away quickly, that he already understood more than I'd said. When we got home, I thanked him, awkward and tired, but he just said he'd check on the front door sometime this week, since I'd mentioned the lock sticking last time. He left, or I thought he did, but 20 minutes later there was a knock. He'd come back with his tools, claiming he had a free hour, and figured he might as well take a look. I let him in. We stood by the door while he tested the latch, the kind of closeness that makes you suddenly aware of how quiet everything else is. No baby crying, no television, no footsteps overhead. Just the soft clicks of metal and the sound of our breathing. When he turned to say something, I don't remember what, the space between us had already closed. The kiss was brief, deliberate, not rushed or messy, not searching for anything beyond what was already there. And then he stepped back, said nothing, and walked out as simply as he had walked in. I didn't follow, didn't move for a long while, just stayed by the door, unsure if what I felt was a sense of something breaking or something barely starting to form. In the days that followed, I made a point to keep space between us, not because I had sorted out how I felt, but because everything suddenly felt like it could slip in the wrong direction with just one misstep. I didn't message Travis, didn't reply right away when he sent a photo of a repaired door latch with a dumb caption about saving laundry day. And I certainly didn't give myself permission to think about that moment near the entryway that I couldn't stop replaying in the quiet hours of the night. Liam, as if sensing the shift, suggested that we visit his parents for the weekend, and although it caught me off guard, I agreed without arguing, partly because I needed something ordinary to hold on to, and partly because I was afraid of what it meant that he was suddenly trying again, even if it felt performative. The drive was long and mostly silent, broken by casual comments about traffic or snacks, and the tension was less a conversation and more a presence, stretched between us like something left unresolved for so long it had started to harden into shape. While we were there, Liam acted normal, polite, attentive, even affectionate in small public gestures. But the distance between us remained obvious in the moments no one was watching. In the way his hand never rested on my back like it used to, or how he stared at his phone during meals as if waiting for a message he wouldn't let me see. I noticed it one night, right before bed, when he placed his phone face down on the nightstand and turned off the light without saying goodnight. It wasn't dramatic, but it was deliberate. After we got home, I began to feel like I was being observed even when I was alone. One afternoon, while cleaning the nursery, I realized the baby monitor app on my tablet had logged into a second device without my knowledge. The screen showed that a remote user had accessed it during the weekend we were away, quietly watching, silently present while I'd thought I was alone in the apartment. I didn't confront Liam, partly because I didn't know how, and partly because something in his silence afterward confirmed what I already suspected. The next day, without comment or explanation, he picked up Mickey for a routine walk, only this time he didn't return for hours. When he finally came home, Mickey was asleep on his shoulder, cheeks flushed from the sun, and Liam simply handed him over with a blank expression, not saying a word about where they'd been. The questions lodged in my throat, heavy and unwelcome, but I didn't ask, because I already knew he wouldn't answer honestly. And maybe worse than that, I wasn't ready to hear it if he did. By the middle of the next week, things began to unravel in ways I hadn't anticipated, not with a dramatic crash, but with the slow, quiet erosion of what little routine I had left. At work, I missed another meeting, the third one this month, and despite the polite warnings from my manager, I could hear the shift in her voice, that subtle drop in tone that told me she'd already started preparing for my absence to become permanent. When the official notice came, a short, impersonal email about reevaluated priorities and project realignments, I wasn't surprised, just numb the way people get when they've already grieved something before it's actually gone. Liam didn't ask what happened, didn't notice that I hadn't left the apartment all day, and didn't say anything when he came in late that night, muttering something about errands and meetings, then locking himself in the bathroom with his phone while I sat on the edge of the bed, trying not to care that I could hear him laughing softly behind the door. There was no confrontation, no open accusations, but the space between us had become too thick with unspoken things, and pretending otherwise only made the silence heavier. Travis stopped by once more, bringing back a paperback I'd lent him weeks earlier, the same one he'd been reading at the cafe that night. We stood in the hallway like strangers who had shared something unnameable and then quietly agreed to forget it. He handed me the book, said he figured I might want it back, then made a half-hearted joke about overdue fines, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. We didn't talk about the kiss. We didn't talk about Liam. We didn't talk at all for more than a few minutes because it was obvious neither of us knew what could be said that wouldn't tip everything too far. A few days later, I received an official-looking envelope in the mail. No return address, just my name printed neatly across the front. Inside were court documents. Liam had filed for a temporary custody review, citing concerns regarding emotional stability and household consistency. I read the words over and over, trying to absorb them, but all I could focus on was how sterile it all felt. No conversation, no warning, just paperwork and assumptions and a version of me that didn't belong to who I was. From that moment on, everything around me began to shift. The way neighbors stopped making eye contact, the subtle but unmistakable change in how familiar faces at daycare greeted me, the quiet judgment hanging in their hesitation. Travis, maybe sensing the direction things were headed, stopped messaging altogether. His silence didn't feel cruel, just cautious, like someone stepping away from a ledge before the ground disappears. After the court notice arrived, I packed a few essentials and moved into Nadia's spare room. A small, overheated space filled with mismatched furniture and a too-thin mattress. But at least it gave me walls that weren't holding on to the memories of everything that had started falling apart. While the lawyers processed schedules and visitation details, I picked up shifts at a call center just to keep the days structured. The hours stacked, the noise constant enough to drown out the ache of missing a child's footsteps echoing through a hallway that no longer belonged to me. Mickey stayed with Liam under a temporary custody agreement, a schedule that allowed me short, structured video calls and 2 supervised visits a week, neither of which lasted long enough to feel like anything but borrowed time. On camera, Mickey would smile, sometimes call me mommy, sometimes slip and say M, and each time I smiled back like it didn't pierce straight through me because showing pain didn't serve anyone, especially not a little boy who just wanted things to feel normal. I hadn't seen Travis since the hallway visit with the returned book, but one night, when insomnia had me scrolling past midnight, I stumbled onto a profile update that showed he had left the city. No dramatic farewell, no final message, just a change in location and a quiet digital signal that said he had pulled away for good. There was no anger in me, no heartbreak the way I might have expected. Just a dull kind of understanding that some people walk in during the cracks and slip out when the weight becomes too uneven to carry. On my birthday, which I had nearly forgotten until the date flashed across my phone, I received a text from Liam's number. A photo of Mickey holding a crumpled piece of paper covered in scribbled hearts, and a sentence obviously written by an adult. "You are my good mommy." I stared at it longer than I probably should have, not because the message was dramatic or poetic, but because it was simple, uncoached, and utterly unfiltered in the way that only children manage to be. That message didn't fix anything, didn't rewind time, didn't undo the custody petition or bring Travis back or restore a job that had slipped through my hands, but it gave me just enough to get through that day without collapsing. The story didn't end with screaming or final confrontations or any kind of cinematic closure. It ended the way most things do in real life. Gradually, without spectacle, as the pieces you thought were yours slowly stopped responding to your voice.